And I'd never shot a movie in black and white, and I always wanted to, so I, of course, said yes, I'd love it.
Hey, Bob, take a picture of all of us. Jackie, come here. Sit over here.
Marty was, even then, very much involved in the preservation of films. And the print stocks of that time in color tended to fade badly. And he was very unhappy about that, and rightly so. And so we figured, hell, we shoot it in black and white, it can't fade, you know? So that was another reason to shoot it in black and white.
And then finally, when we came back from the island, we went to the 14th Street Gym. It's no longer there. And De Niro showed me what Jake LaMotta and Jimmy Nickerson, the stunt coordinator, had worked out. And Jake had choreographed these 9 fight scenes we had. And Bob got in the ring with Jimmy, and he showed me all the moves of each fight, each 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. And I was stunned. Because I realized it was going to take an extraordinary amount of effort to do what I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. In fact, I was so stunned that I couldn't react. I just sat there. And I remember at one point, De Niro came out of the ring with his mouthpiece on. He said, "Are you paying attention? Because we're killing ourselves in there." I said, yeah, I am. You all right? I said, yeah. He said, "You bored by it? Is something wrong?" I said, no, go. No, I'm fine. Let me take, is that the layer? Yeah, that's the Dutch wheel thing. Oh, okay. I suddenly realized, oh my God. I said, to do this the way, the way I wanted to do it, we're going to wind up being there for years. I got to be careful. I got to figure out how to design it so that I can shoot it efficiently. And so they gave me a black and white video. I took it to my apartment and I put it in, and I realized that I had to make these notes and drawings and diagrams. And what I wound up doing really was designing every fight scene sort of like the musical numbers in New York, where for 14 or 12 bars of music or 4 bars of music, there'd be one shot. And that shot would have a beginning, middle, and an end, which would cut on to another shot for the next bar. No 3 cameras, no 5 cameras, just intercutting later, more selecting in the editing room, was really directing for an emotional and psychological impact per shot. And
by Marty. And so it went with all of the fights.
He was very precise in what he wanted. I mean, we spent, if you think of all the fight stuff, 8 or 9 weeks in the studio area, then out at the Olympic Stadium for I forget how much time. I'd say maybe a week or more, I forget, but half the movie was shot in the ring.
I hate storyboards, except Marty's, because most storyboards are drawn by storyboard artists, and they're comic strips. You might as well just do a comic strip, not do the movie. But Marty's were only diagrams of where the energy should go, and his storyboards are marvelous.
The main sequence in which we used the storyboards a lot was the final beating that Jake takes from Sugar Ray Robinson. He refuses to go down. He was famous for never going down. He said he could take any amount of punishment, and he proved it in that fight. It's terrifying. And Marty had done elaborate storyboards for all of the many, many shots that he took for that sequence. As we were editing it, we discovered that the kinetic flow of the images actually dictated sometimes different structure. So we spent a long time on that sequence, juggling the shots around. So the storyboards were very, very important. But in that particular sequence, we did violate them. Marty used real referees and real people in the corners, real fighters. All of Jake's opponents were real fighters because he feels that real people bring something to a film that no actor can. Also, Marty wanted to reproduce the very sort of crude way fights were filmed in those days so that the commercials would be superimposed over the fighter in the corner, and you could actually see them flip cards over. And so we reproduced it exactly with the hand flipping the cards. But we did use the original announcer's voice because Marty said nobody can ever get the poetry in that voice again. The way the man spoke and the way he described things was just memorable. So we were able to use the actual voice of the TV announcer or radio announcer at the time, and it worked wonderfully.
Marty's taking terrible punishment on the ropes as Lucille bangs him with left and right to the head. Another left, another...
But I think one of the most beautiful things he did was inject religious imagery into the film in that final terrible fight, where you see Jake in the corner just about dead, being administered to by a man who was actually Jake LaMotta's handler. And the way he's moving, he's putting Vaseline on his face, but the way he's moving is almost as if he's giving him the last rites. Very, very moving.
In the credit sequence, where he is in slow motion and in the ring, there are a series of flashbulbs going on in the background as he's doing it. And that was, in fact, me, all wrapped up in black velour, so you wouldn't see anybody. And I would just shoot and then reload in the dark. Somebody would kind of lead me around because I could barely see because I was all covered in black, and then I'd go to somewhere else and I'd flash. Shooting an old press camera, a speed graphic, with very old flash bulbs that had a slow rate of decay. Modern flashes are so fast that at least half of them, statistically, don't show up because the shutter's closed. But the old flash bulbs from the 40s, which were very hard to find and which now don't exist except for movie special effects and expensive as hell, but we bought bunches of them. And because they were these old flash bulbs with a very slow decay rate, most of them showed up.
And that was the last thing we shot in California when we were shooting the fight scenes before going to New York to shoot the dramatic scenes. We shot all the fight scenes first in Los Angeles. And the fight scenes were scheduled for 5 weeks. But in doing them shot by shot, the way I envisioned it, it was a laborious process which went over twice the length in shooting. So I think it was about 10 weeks.
We ran over a little bit, but the work seemed to be going very well, and the material that we saw every night, the dailies from the day before, were quite good. So we just kept going along, and we never really had any great problems with the studio because I think they were so busy with Heaven's Gate at the time that they kind of left us alone.
And then it took about another 10 weeks shooting in New York and Los Angeles for the dramatic scenes in the picture.
People seem to think for some reason that Robert and I just spouted off at the mouth anytime we wanted to. It's not so. We improvised in rehearsals and transcribed everything, and that was the Bible, and Marty wouldn't let you change that unless something really popped up that was terrific, you know.
Harder, harder, harder. That's hot, you fuck. What do you want? Take it off.
And they shot and shot and shot, and it kept getting better and better. And then Marty decided to put the prop man outside in the tenement alley.
What's the matter with you up there, you animal?
What?
Son of a bitch, he's calling me an animal. Hey, you!
Marty knew that this guy had the kind of personality where he could motivate Bob and get Bob mad, so he just stuck him down in the alley.
Larry! Crazy animal! Who's an animal? Your mother's an animal, you son of a bitch! Oh.
A great deal of the ambience in Raging Bull comes through the windows because Marty, when he was growing up in the tenement buildings, you would hear other people playing music, you would hear families arguing, you would smell cooking, and so he wanted that to be in the movie.
You're in your fucking ass, you tell you! Go out!
What's the matter with you, huh?
What the fuck out?
At one point, though, I think it was one of the few formal questions I ever recall De Niro asking me about anything, really. He asked me, Jake LaMotta as a character, if he were an animal, what would he be in your mind? And I said, I guess a leopard. Maybe. He says, that's funny. He says, I see more as a crab. I said, okay. He sees it as a crab. I'm watching what he does. I like it. I'm not going to argue with him it's a leopard.
We come together, we want to do things, but he'll do it for his reason, I'll do it for mine. And as any actor will tell you who's worked with him, he will try anything with you. You know, you have come up with an idea, give him a choice, he'll try it. So he's very open to that stuff.
I started shooting them, the whole movies, and I couldn't frame them badly enough. All my instincts led me to frame them rather artily, you know, here and there, which of course is utterly wrong. So I told that to Marty. I said, Marty, I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. I can't get it right. Why don't you do it? So he said, okay, I'll do it. And he started doing it, and he couldn't do it either. He had the instincts of framing, of how you do it, and he couldn't make them look amateur enough. He couldn't. So we finally got the Teamsters to come, and we would give them the camera and say, here, you go shoot this. And so the various Teamsters would shoot those, and they, being utterly amateurs, got it just right, you know, that it looked like amateur footage.
Then Marty wanted to make sure it looked battered and as if it had been around in somebody's closet for a while, so then we started.
There's hardly anything improv. I don't think there's hardly any improv in there. Very, very little. Maybe a few words here and there, but it was the escalation of his distrust and paranoia of his brother. The escalation is what I was getting at.
I think it was a brilliant idea of Paul Schrader's to narrow the structure down and make it rest heavily on the two brothers, because you could show Jake's paranoia and his jealousy very easily that way.
I'm your brother. You're supposed to believe me. Don't you trust me?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? That's nice.
I don't trust you when it comes to her. I don't trust nobody.
and the closeness of their relationship, that they depended so heavily on each other, and then to see that begin to fray and to have him turn even on someone who was maybe the closest to him in his whole life showed you how far gone he was.
There was just no two ways around it. He was headed towards full destruction. And that's the scene. It's the center of the movie. That's it.
She really did some job on you, know?
That was all very pretty much planned. And of course, when he finally said,
You fucked my wife.
It was just such a strange thing to me that a brother would ask another brother that question. I couldn't imagine one brother having sex with another brother's wife. Maybe it's because of where I came from in my neighborhood. And Robert knew the kind of person I was, so he kept going after me and going after me. And I think at one point he wanted to get another reaction out of me.
he did a take off camera, and he told Pesci off camera, he said, "You fuck your mother." And so that's the one we used. You'll see Joe's surprise.
You fuck my wife.
What?
Which is wonderful. That's why I learned about acting and watch these guys.
How come you didn't tell me about the coke?
That we felt, at least on that level, but that kind of, the world we'll be depicting, you know. And also, it's a world that they're in. They know damn well what they're into, and they know who they are, I think.
I think that she really did love him very, very much. You know, and she understood him for some reason. She understood, I think she understood that it really just wasn't his fault. Or she couldn't blame him for it all the time.
I mean, it's an interesting thing about a fighter. I mean, you know, his job is to go in the ring and hit people and be hit. That's his drive. That's what he does. When he comes out of the ring, he's expected to act like a courtly gentleman? I don't know.
No, I'm no Olivier, but if he fought Sugar Ray, he would say that the thing ain't the ring, it's the play.
I've known Bob now since we made our first movie together in 1972, since the gang that couldn't shoot straight. So we've known each other for, 30-some-odd years. And the only time I ever had an argument with Bob in all these years was about gaining the weight. What happened was, he said to me that I think the best way to do this for me to gain the weight is to shut down production, for me to go off and gain 50, 60 pounds, and be the Jake LaMotta that you will see as a different character, basically, because of the weight and the look of his face and the gait and everything else. And we had an argument about it, and I said, we can make prosthetics for you, we can build up your neck and all that, and puff up your face and all. And he said, you don't understand. I have to become that Jake LaMotta character. I have to become that, and the only way I could do that is to gain the weight. And I kept saying it's not necessary and it's not good for your health, and I don't know how I'm going to shut down the movie for 3 months while you do this. He said, I got to do it.
He was clear as to what he wanted to do, and he wanted to go all the way with his characterization of Jake.
He was starting to gain the weight previous. He'd always say, want to have a milkshake with me? But he needed to gain weight. I didn't, so that wasn't working out well, because I was starting to gain weight then, so I skipped the milkshake and the cheesecake. But there was concern for his health and stuff, but he knew what he was doing.
Robert did it because he really wanted to feel what Jake LaMotta felt, because Jake LaMotta had always had a hard time making the weight. That's all he talked about was the weight, making the weight, making the weight. And he made such a big issue out of it, talking to Robert all the time, that Robert wanted to feel that sensation of blowing up like that. And he didn't do it to grandstand or to get an Oscar, and I felt so bad for him, because every asshole in the world in Hollywood says that kind of thing, and it's not true.
And so there was a hiatus. Bob gained a little weight, and I came back through L.A., and we shot the scene at the pool, where he announces with his children and his wife that he's not going to fight anymore.
It's over for me. Boxing's over for me. I'm through.
And then ultimately, around Christmas time, '79, we shot the last 7 or 8 days, and Bob was at full weight.
I was never no good at it.
I hadn't heard from him for weeks and weeks and weeks, and one day somebody walked into my office, and I literally didn't recognize him, and he had this big smile on his face, and there was the Jake LaMotta that he wanted to become.
Apparently, he ended up going to Italy and just stuffing himself full of pasta and having it was quite a shock. I mean, it was a shock to us, just as it's a shock to the audience when they see it and they realize that it is not padding, it's not anything. He's just fat, and it's just, there is no trickery involved, We shot quicker at that point, too, because the weight was